I was elected to talk about ancillaries, and what I found out about ancillaries is that they're kind of complicated, and they're they're not flashy because they're not actually showing up in your model anywhere. Something else I found about is that we've been pronouncing ancillaries incorrectly. It's ancillaries. I don't know why I've been pronouncing it wrong all these years, and apparently all the fabrication world has been pronouncing it wrong. So, in order to make this fun, I propose a drinking game. If I say the word wrong, you chug. You may not learn anything because by the time you're done, you might have drank a little bit too much. And you can always watch the webinar again later on YouTube. By the way, if your boss does allow you to have alcohol on the job, send me his email, and I'll send a job application here as soon as we're done with the webinar. All right, so let's get to it. Ancillaries, whatever they are. Let's take a look at where they are in the database first. Go to the database, we're going to go to fittings, and we'll go to ancillaries. So first thing we see here is a giant list of entries, correct? Let's just take a look at one of them randomly here. Here's the description, and you can change that, and here's the product ID. Again, this is where we're inputting the data. We can give it a cost. We can give it a specific value. We could say this one is going to be $1, okay? Or we can point it to a price list in the database. We can also apply some weight, some fabrication installation times. All right. So being that these are not graphically represented in the model, they commonly get overlooked, but there's a lot of power to ancillaries from a purchasing standpoint. I think a lot of purchasing departments, they just buy a roundabout figure. Hey, you know, this seems to be about right, but they don't really know, right? So instead of having leftover bolts and gaskets and nuts laying around on the floor, which are going to get swept up and thrown away, we can get a better understanding of exactly what we need to get our project installed. So that's the purpose behind ancillaries. If we take the time to model every nut and bolt, it's going to cost you a lot of time, a lot of hours, and it's going to weigh down your your model, right? It's going to take a lot longer to refresh and zoom around and that kind of thing. So we want to keep those things in the background. Being that they're in the background, they don't get a lot of attention, so that's the point of this. Ancillaries are applied in several different ways. If you look at the categories here on the left side, seams, here's the different ancillary categories that we can apply to a seam. Okay, here's the different categories that we can apply to a connector, stiffeners, splitters, air turn supports. Okay, so when you're kind of questioning the purpose behind the ancillary that you're building, what's the end goal? The end goal is to apply it at the connector level. Okay, the end goal is to apply it to a support. That's where you would start. You know, start by coming here to this category and then breaking it down into which one best fits the product I'm trying to enter. Okay, so the way it's applied to a connector, let's go to the connectors. Right here, I happen to be on some ductwork, so let's take a look at this one. Here we have some ancillary materials being applied to ductmate, and we have some applied to S&D. All right, so let's take a look at the ductmate connector. All right, so we've got some material, and we've got some corners here. We've got some bolts. Notice the corners. There's no quantity in corners. I think that's pretty straightforward. Most of our duct is going to be rectangular, so You know, just do the math, come out to be about 4, something along those lines. I don't know if anybody's doing 3-sided duct. That would be kind of interesting. So bolts, we can give ourselves the quantities. Clips, we can give a quantity here as well. So let's take a look at how this works in the model. I've got an error there I need to take a look at. So I have a quick model I just threw together to represent some information. So here's a piece of duct, and we've got some duct made applied to it. Okay, let's take a look at how this information is going to come out in a report. So here's an ancillary report, and right off the bat, we're seeing we got a flange. Okay, we have some sealant, we've got a gasket, we've got some EMT, we got clips, corners, bolts. All these things matter in the installation of a fitting, right? And we want to report these things, right? The end goal behind a model is to get a quantifiable count of what it's going to take to build the project. Without this data, it's just a pretty model. The point of BIM is the eye. It's getting the information, putting it in correctly so we can get it out correctly. Okay, so in this instance for duct, we've applied the ancillary to the connector. Okay, and ancillaries can be applied to any connector, but they can also be applied at the fitting themselves. All right, so if we come to the properties, and every fitting has an ancillaries tab. Here we can define an ancillary. Okay, I'm just going to make something up here. We'll just put test, and we're going to say that this is going to come from the materials. It's going to be based on the size, the end size. I'm going to click OK. All right, so now it has given me an entry into that fitting. All right. So now I can come in here and define what ancillary I'm trying to report out. Okay, obviously this isn't something you would want to do, but we can define a bolt kit, and it's based on the foot. So I'm going to hit OK here, and let's see if that took. I don't even know if that's going to save in that. Okay, let's see if we have a new entry in the report. I think I'm going to get multiples because we already had some nuts and bolts. So we'll take that back out. But they can be applied at the fitting themselves. In some instances, you're going to want to apply them at the fitting. Ideally, especially if you're doing this in retrospect, you're going to want to put it in at the connector. Because if you do it at the connector, the information is going to take hold on your existing model. If you apply it at the fitting level, you're not going to be able to take advantage of that data until that fitting has been placed into the model. If you follow what I'm trying to say here, I'm trying to say that if I apply it at the connector, since the connector is already in the model, the report's going to work. Being that the fitting is in the model, but there's no entry on the fitting under the ancillaries tab, you'd have to come in and replace all the fittings, or you would just have to wait until that new entry starts being placed in the new models. So there's two ways to take care of ancillaries there. Let's take a look at the ancillaries under supports. There's a lot that happens to make a support go together, right? I mean, you've got the bear, you've got the nuts, bolts, rods, and what kind of decking that you're attaching the hanger to. The supports are defined here within the fitting. obviously supports don't really have a connector, so we're not going to apply it at the connector level. We're going to apply it within the fitting itself. So what we're going to do is we'll take a look at what all is being defined in this support. All right, so this is a steel pipe clevis hanger. I'm going to go to breakpoints, and what we have here is a list of entries for a steel pipe hanger. There's a lot that goes into this, and anything less than or equal to 2, less than or equal to 3.5, that's the way these tables work. Here's another tab here. So anything less than or equal to 2, we're going to get a 3/8 rod. Okay, our rod extension is going to be 3/4. The diameter of the rod is again 3/8. We're going to need to get a quantity of 2 bolts. We're also going to need a quantity of 2 washers, right? And then we have another category over here for top fixing. So depending on what kind of slab or you're attaching this hanger to, it depends on what kind of fixing you need to hang that support from. So here we have bangers, and then we go to the flat deck. We got the drop-in anchors, and so on and so forth. You can change these up as you need them. If you don't fill this out correctly ahead of time, that's okay. You can always come back and fix them on the fly as long as they've been applied to the fitting prior to them being applied to the model, okay? So now all this information that we're looking at here has already been entered into the database. Threaded rod, 3/8. Let's go look and see if we can find where that's at in the ancillaries. Unfortunately, we can't get to the ancillaries list from here. We have to close out and go back to the database. Let's go to the supports category, and we'll see if we can find the 3/8 rod. Is that under fixings?
Support rods.
It's under support rods. Hey, that makes sense. All right. All right. So here's an entry, threaded rods. This is a category. We can change the name of our category. We can create a new category. This has been pre-assigned, the name of the rod, okay, a product ID, a price list, where it's going to get the pricing from, how much this weighs per foot. These kinds of things matter. So the better the information we put in, the better the information we can get back out. And the linear length. So we're going to buy these in 10-foot sticks, okay? So we put that data in there, and then we turn around and we're going to tie that into the support specification, not support specification, support ancillary kit. All right, so let's take a look at the way this is going to report out in the report. All right, so just by clicking on that one hanger, we know that we're going to need 3 feet, 1.5 inches of rod, 3/4 inch rod, and we're also going to need 2 washers and 2 nuts. And if we duplicate this, let's set the attacher on there, and we'll throw on another support. And we'll select them both. All right. Oh, looks like our length is going to be messed up. I think I need to take a look at my report. I'm not going to try to fix that right now while everyone's watching. So the length needs to have doubled because we've doubled our quantities. If you saw the nuts and washers doubled, but not the rod length. So that's a good way for using ancillaries. So another way for using ancillaries is using them for nuts and bolts. prior to Inceptia and applied software getting a hold and really tackling the quality of the database, nuts were applied by using an actual fitting. Okay, it would basically be a zero length fitting, and it really had no purpose aside from showing up in the report. You only want to put things in your model that actually take up mass. It's going to collision with something. That's the point of putting it in there. So in an effort to take that out, what we've done is we've applied an ancillary to the fitting. All right. So in order to get a nut and bolt for the requirements to put this valve in, we've applied an ancillary to the fitting itself. Okay. So in this instance, we've defined, we're going to call this a bolt kit. It's going to come from the kits, and it's going to be based on the end size, the diameter. Okay, it's not going to be based on the length. So with this, there's no graphical information going on between here. Here, I can split these up, and we'll show you. All right, so there's nothing going on between that except for what's actually needed. Let's take a look at what we're going to get for this valve. All right, so for this valve, the ancillaries is telling us that we need a quantity of 32 washers and 32 cap screws. And this data is going to be coming from that kit. Let's go take a look at that kit and look how it's been broken down. And that was the NIBCO series lug butterfly valve kit. Okay, it has a very specific use. This kit is going to be very specifically used for the NIBCO lug series valves. Okay, so this is a breakpoints table. This table is based on the one size diameter. If we were going to be using this on duct, we could use a width and a depth table. All right. So as we progress through the table, we need to change the quantity. We need to change the diameter of the fixings, right? So on less than or equal to 2, we need a quantity of 4 of these cap screws. Okay. And we also need a quantity of 4 of the flat washers. So we can't assign these into our kit unless they've already been assigned in the database. Okay, so there's a progression. They have to be entered initially into the database, and then we can build the kit based on those entries. So we don't need to have useless fittings that have no length floating around in our database. And we can actually report these out in the manner they're supposed to be used. I don't know if back when the program started they didn't have these features, or if it was just a workaround because some folks didn't quite understand the power of ancillaries and how to best take advantage of them. So let's take a look at another instance. In this instance, you would think that we have applied an ancillary to this fitting, right? So let's take a look. No ancillary, okay? Well, we applied it to this valve, but why not the strainer, all right? So in this instance, we need a bolt kit here and here, right? We need 2 bolt kits, but what's the best way to apply these? We have here a gasket, right? We got a gasket on both sides. We need a gasket in order to make this work. So let's put the ancillary on the gasket instead of, there's several different, the way we think about this is we could put it on the flange, we could put it on the fitting, or we could put it on the gasket. All right, let's take a look at what's going on in the gasket. All right, so we've applied a bolt kit of the non-asbestos ring. All right, so that's, again, that's a very specific use of that kit. All right, so here's the non-asbestos ancillary kit. All right, again, it's another breakpoints table. It's based on the diameter, and as we progress through the size, you'll see the information changes. And because this information's already been written into the database, we can assign it to a kit and then build a kit off of this information. So again, we change the quantity as the size gets larger. Here's another thing. Because we already have a kit for the gasket, let's call the gasket an ancillary. Yes, gaskets have a very small width. We could report them out in the reports. In this instance, why not take advantage of the ancillary feature, and let's put everything that has to do with it right here. All right, so when we report this out, I can report all of this. All right, so there's no ancillaries coming from the strainer. There's no ancillaries coming from the flange or the weld. There's ancillaries only coming from the gasket itself. So we have a quantity of 2 gaskets, and it's telling me exactly how many washers, nuts, cap screws that I'm going to need. All right. So there's another way to apply ancillaries to your model. What about solvent? What kind of information is useful here? What's been done here is been applied to the connector itself. I'm sorry, I clicked on the wrong. There we go. All right, so we've got a solvent welded material applied as an ancillary here. So let's go take a look at what's going to print out if I click on that fitting. All right, so now I know that I've got 4 solvent welded. Now I don't know how much I'm going to have to buy to get those 4 done, but at least it gives us a starting point, a quantifiable count of how many solvent welds we're going to have to put together. We can apply some labor to that. If you're really good with numbers, you might be able to figure out how much you need to buy. But getting this information out and giving it to your purchasing department will better equip them to get the right material, the right quantities of materials. They don't overbuy, hope they don't underbuy. They get the right amount out to the job site to get these things completed. All right. That's a quick rundown of ancillaries. I don't have any earth-shattering tricks. Scott, you're welcome to jump back in if you have anything else to add. But just to give you a rundown of the different uses of ancillaries, different ways you can apply them, and getting it's worth the time to enter the data into your database so that you can report it back out. Are there any questions that we can field right now? Sometimes questions can be kind of complicated to field on the spot, but I'm happy to answer any if there's any worth any good ones to take time on. No questions. All right. Well,
I'm reading over some of the questions in the I don't know, the questions box to see if anything applies. Well, you know, one that I'm typing out right now is someone pointed out, well, why are you attaching ancillaries to items that are already in the model? Yeah, he was doing that for demonstration purposes, but ideally you're going to attach all those things to your parts before they hit your model. Additionally, it was said, well, you know, couldn't you run update from source? And my understanding of update from source is the only thing that it will update is custom data. So if you've changed your custom data entries and then run the command update from source, it would update those. But you know, and honestly I haven't tested out the ancillaries, but my understanding of update from source is it only applies to custom data. So that wouldn't help us. So these really are things that you want to have well thought out and done in advance. Trying to get that in the middle of a project is a little bit tougher.
we can run some tests on that, and you know, if it's successful, we'll definitely send out an email. That's a great way of getting them updated.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions? I think I was going kind of fast, so I believe we have time. I don't know what time it is.
Yeah, let me
It's 12
see.
o'clock.
A half hour.
Half hour.
If you guys haven't looked in the questions, we did answer a few. So even if you hadn't thought of them, if you look over the questions, it may spark some, and so you'll get some answers in there.
So Tony asked if he's allowed to drink now.
The answer to that, Tony, is yes.
Yes, always. It's 12 o'clock now.
So to clear the air on that for you there, Dave, I looked it up, and it turns out ancillary is the American pronunciation. Ancillary is British. So if you want to go that way, that's fine, but you better start doing it consistently. So hangers are going to be hang gears for you, man. Hang gears, yeah.
I have to start saying not got the latest database.
So basically, we can say however we like then. I like that.
No. How are we going to drink if we say it that way?
Well, either way you like.
I'm just looking for an excuse, that's all.
Yeah.
You want to go over some of the questions that are posted up here, so we can just answer them verbally here?
Sure. Can new ancillary parts be created? Absolutely. Ancillaries are fairly easy to add. It just gets complicated figuring out where's the best place to attach them. Really, the most complicated part about building an ancillary is just getting it pointed at the proper costing and labor tables. But other than that, there's not a whole lot to the ancillaries. Give them good, intelligent names, point them, give them unique product IDs, and point them at the proper tables. So the building of the ancillaries isn't too complicated. There's usually a lot of them. You can see how many on the screen there, how many different bolts it takes. But they can be added fairly quickly.
Our ancillaries.
Go ahead. Go ahead. William?
Someone asked if the ancillaries are all built into our value pack database, and the answer is yes. Are everything in the world in there? No. But there is a whole lot in there. A whole lot of ancillaries have been created.
So I had my mute going backwards. Sorry about that. Can AR be reported out of the item reports? Do you know what that means?
AR.
Ancillary reports, I guess.
Okay, say that again.
Does AR mean ancillary reports, I'm assuming? Maybe is that what it means?
Yeah, I would guess so.
Correct. I believe that Ryan is asking if ancillary reports or ancillary information can be picked up through item reports. I think he reworded it later. The only thing that you can pick up on ancillaries inside of item reports are time and cost data. You won't have access to the source, for example, or the naming convention. You would only have times.
Yeah, ancillary reports are a completely separate animal. There are no ancillary print objects in your regular item reports. So it does mean that two reports have to be run. But if you're using the new processes, then you can report them all out at the same time. Or just using what David's using right there, using the print preview, which I like a lot. You can select multiples and always just select your ancillaries with your bill of materials. I'm usually fine with it being a separate list because a lot of the times the ancillaries are going to a different supplier.
You know, Scott, something I didn't show was having the ancillaries applied to the ductmate frame. Scott was able to come up with a pretty great way of getting a cut list of the ductmate. So I wanted to show that as a very useful in the shop. So we're going to use a linear mesh report to get that information. So by selecting on that fitting, here's a cut list of what we need to get cut up in the shop. That's been a big question for a long time, and this is based on the ancillary.
Yeah, so I guess ancillary reports are not the only place you can report ancillaries. You can also report them inside of linear nesting.
Very useful information.
So there's another question here. It says, is there a good practice fixings in bolts such as washers belonging with clips fixings? I believe he says and inserts. That's what he means, etc. It's Christian Mondo.
I'm sorry, I was reading another one. What was that?
Oh, okay. Well, the Christian Mondo, 11:59 a.m. Is there a good practice to locate clips, fixings, and bolts such as washers belonging with clips, fixings, and inserts, etc.?
To locate them. I don't know if I'm completely clear on the question.
I don't know that I'm understanding it either.
Yeah.
Is there a way to associate top fixing sizes to the rod diameter? Okay, maybe he clarified it in the second question. I didn't see it answered that.
Yes, absolutely. The top fixings are set in a breakpoint table for sizes, so you would specify exactly which fixing you would want at a particular size. Because
I think he rephrased it and answered it, so.
Yeah. Okay.
What one were you looking at? You were looking at a question, Scott?
Yes, I just didn't get all the way through it.
We can always follow up on some of these questions in emails.
We got a lot more questions about trying to combine ancillaries into your other reports, and the answer is just no, 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 no. Not even in an export. There is ancillary reports, then there's also ancillary exports. So it would have to be, if you're doing exports, then it would be exported as a separate text file or CSV file. Now those separate reports could be combined later, but they're going to report out separately. And Andy explained to me one time why that wasn't possible, and it made sense when he explained it, but I cannot do it justice. But there are specific reasons. There are technological reasons why ancillary is a separate report. It's very different than the item reports.
Well, if you adopt the workflow and reports of sending it out using the export features, then you could combine them in a text or Excel format if that's really an issue. But again, you're still using two separate features in the program.
Yeah.
All right. Is there a way, maybe, and tell me if this has been answered already, is there a way to export items and ancillaries out at the same time to be able to drop them into an Excel sheet?
Processes.
Process.
Yes, you can run a process, and you process order material and have it run your bill of materials and your ancillary report at the same time.
Okay.
So to me, that really doesn't make it that much different. They're on two different sheets, but it's all can all come out at the same time. You could even program a button just for that process to say order materials.
All right. Let's see if we can find another one here. Oh, it went to the top. Okay. Maybe Gene was asking the same question there where he says separate reports for each are not preferred. All right. Let's see. That's got most of them there. Do you guys see anything else? Can new ancillary parts be created? Did you answer that one yet?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. I think we got them all. All right. So with you guys all on the line, did you see a particular question you liked the best?
Yes, I did. If I can choose, there was one question that just tickled me silly, and everyone knows who it is. If I can find it, it is. Am I allowed to drink yet, Tony?
What the heck? All right, so Tony, if you're still on, text in your next. Put your question in. Says drinking now, and you will receive an Amazon card. Oh, there he is. So
there he is.
Congratulations. Good question. Yes, you may begin drinking. Buy something good to drink from Amazon.
All right.
All right. Let's see. Oh, Chris jumped back in. We got time still. Let's see if we can answer this real quick. Current ancillary reports in our standard. You guys see the bottom question?
Okay, let me see. All right.
Show up.
I guess I'm not being clear in my question. Bear with me. Let me review it.
Separate ancillary report.
He's saying that the ancillaries that he has applied are being picked up as a part of labor or costs in his item reports as an extension of the piece. Is there a way to not have those show up so you can have them report separately? I believe that's what I'm picking up in my head.
Sounds like he's talking about a costing report in EST, and the cost being attached to that cost of the ancillaries being attached to the items.
Right.
Could we separate those? I don't think so. If you took those ancillaries off, of course, then they wouldn't report at all. Yeah, your cost and your labor for the ancillaries will be a part of that item.